Okay, so you're here because you want to get to the heart of what matters, right? You want to cut through the noise and get that crucial information, and that's exactly what we do here.
Absolutely. And today we're diving into a really big development in the world of space exploration.
It's huge, and it's happening right now.
Yeah, just this past Sunday, the German startup Isar Aerospace, they attempted to launch their Spectrum rocket.
And it was from Norway?
From Norway.
Yeah.
And the big deal here is that this was the first ever attempt to launch an orbital rocket into space from mainland Europe.
Right, excluding Russia, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're not talking about little hops here.
You know,
This is Europe trying to make a statement, a big statement about really getting a foothold in space.
Europe wants to build its own highway to space.
Yeah, an on-ramp to space. So in this deep dive, we're going to break down exactly what went down with this launch, give you all the context from a variety of sources. We've got reports from The Guardian, CNN, Deutsche Welle, a lot of different perspectives on this.
Yeah, a lot of great reporting. And by the end, you'll understand the implications, what this all means for Europe's ambitions in space. Because, let's face it, access to space is becoming more and more critical every single day.
It's essential, and in a world that's changing so rapidly, who controls that access is a huge question.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
Sunday, 12:03 p.m. local time at the Andoya Spaceport,
Way up north.
Arctic Norway.
Beautiful, but brutal.
Yeah, and those first few moments, everything looked really good. I mean, the rocket lifted off.
Which you'd think, hey, that's a big step.
You'd think that's the biggest hurdle, but then pretty quickly, I think it was around 30 seconds into the flight,
Yeah, we started seeing reports of smoke.
smoke, and then, yeah, unfortunately it came crashing back down. Pretty powerful explosion.
It was dramatic.
It was dramatic, yeah. All the reports that we look at, they all confirmed that the flight was terminated at that 30-second mark.
And Isar Aerospace themselves, they released a statement saying that the vehicle then fell into the sea.
In a controlled manner.
In a controlled manner, right? But still, it's a big setback.
It is, and a lot of people were watching this live, right? It was streamed on YouTube.
Yeah, so it wasn't some secret thing. This was very public.
Very public, and I think it's important to note, this was a test flight, unmanned, no payload on board.
It was really just about the rocket itself.
Yeah, seeing if this thing could actually fly.
Right, how it performed, how the systems worked.
Exactly, and, even though it didn't go as planned, Isar Aerospace seems to be focusing on what they did learn.
Yeah, they put out a statement highlighting that they said, a huge amount of valuable data.
Huge amount. Those are their words.
Yeah.
And I think that's significant, right? They're saying, look, we got something out of this.
They're looking at the positives.
Yeah, this wasn't a complete failure. This data is going to be crucial for their future missions.
So even though they didn't reach orbit, those 30 seconds were packed with valuable information.
Yeah, exactly. They squeezed every bit of knowledge they could out of that flight.
Which is interesting because I think for a lot of people watching, they just saw a rocket explode and they thought, oh, well, that's it. That's a failure. But it seems like in the world of space exploration, it's not quite so black and white.
No, it's not. And I think what's really telling is how some of the major figures in the space industry are reacting to this Joseph Aschbacher, who's the Director General of the ESA.
Big guy.
Yeah, he went straight to X.
That's the platform formerly known as Twitter, just for anyone who's not up to date with the name changes.
Exactly. So Aschbacher goes on X, and his message is super positive.
Which I think surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, he's emphasizing the fact that they got off the launch pad, that they did gather data, and he's encouraging Isar to learn from this and keep pushing forward.
He's saying this is part of the process.
Yeah, space launches are hard. They're incredibly complex, and these initial tests are all about learning by doing.
So failure is almost built into the process.
In a way, yeah, you have to be willing to take risks to learn and to improve.
Okay, so we know what happened. We saw the dramatic footage, but why was this particular launch attempt such a big deal? I mean, rockets fail sometimes, right? What made this one stand out?
You're right. Rockets do fail. It's part of the game. But the significance here lies in the context.
So there's more to this than meets the eye.
Yeah, this was the very first attempt at a commercial orbital launch from mainland Europe.
Again, excluding Russia.
Right, and that's crucial. There's this rapidly growing global market for commercial space missions, and several European nations, they want to get in on that.
They don't want to be part of the club.
Exactly. Sweden, the UK, they've all made it clear that they want a piece of that pie.
And just to clarify, when we say orbital rockets, we're not talking about something that just goes up and comes right back down.
No, these are rockets designed to put satellites and other spacecraft into orbit around the Earth.
We're talking thousands of miles high.
Yeah, this is the real deal. And, this push for Europe to have its own independent launch capabilities, it becomes even more critical when you think about their history, their reliance on Russia for launches.
Which has been a big part of how Europe has gotten things into space in the past.
Yeah, but that relationship's basically gone since the invasion of Ukraine in 2022.
Things changed rapidly.
Yeah, and now Europe needs its own reliable, independent way to get things into space.
It's no longer just about commercial opportunities. It's about strategic autonomy.
It's about control. You can't rely on other nations, especially in times of geopolitical uncertainty.
It's like suddenly realizing you need your own airport when the one you've been using is no longer an option.
Exactly that. And the competition in space, it's fierce.
It's a space race 2.0.
We've got major players in the U.S. SpaceX, Lockheed Martin, Boeing.
Big names.
And China's also emerging as a major force in space.
So Europe's trying to catch up in a way.
Yeah, they're trying to carve out their own space in this new frontier. And the potential economic impact of the space industry, it's massive.
Yeah.
Some estimates suggest revenues could be over $1 trillion within the next 2 decades.
That's a lot of money.
It is. So for Europe, this isn't just about prestige. There's a lot of money at stake here.
Okay, so it's clear why this launch was so important. But, looking at the broader European space landscape, it's not like Europe's new to this whole space thing. They've been involved for a long time, but they've also had some recent challenges, haven't they?
Absolutely. The sources we looked at, they point out some significant delays in the development of the Ariane 6 rocket.
Which was supposed to be a big deal for Europe.
Yeah, a cornerstone of their space program. And then we also saw the Vega C satellite launcher grounded after an accident.
So some setbacks.
Setbacks, yeah. And I think this highlights the difficulties Europe's facing in maintaining its position in this global space race.
They're trying to keep up.
Yeah, and I think Isar Aerospace's attempt can be seen as a response to those challenges, these new agile companies trying to innovate and fill the gap.
It's like the old guard versus the new kids on the block.
In a way, yeah, and Isar isn't the only European company trying to make a splash in this sector.
There are others?
Yeah, in Germany you got High Pulse and Rocket Factory, Augsburg, RFA. They're doing some interesting work.
Okay. And what about other countries?
France has Latitude and Maya Space.
And Spain?
Spain has PLD Space.
So there's a real ecosystem developing here.
Yeah, a whole network of private space companies in Europe.
And where are all these companies going to launch from? I mean, location must be pretty important for these things.
Yeah, location is key.
Yeah.
And there are plans for new European spaceports popping up in a bunch of places. The Shetland Islands in the UK, the Azores in Portugal.
Beautiful places.
There's range in Sweden.
And why these locations?
Well, the preference for coastal sites near open water, it's all about safety.
Makes sense.
Yeah, if something goes wrong during a launch, you want any debris to fall into the ocean, not on populated areas.
Right. You don't want rocket parts raining down on people's houses.
Exactly. And speaking of safety, the reports we looked at also touched on the UK's experience as a potential launch site.
And it hasn't all been smooth sailing there, has it?
No, not really. The bankruptcy of Virgin Orbit after that failed launch from Cornwall.
Which was a big story.
Yeah, it was a reminder that this is hard. This is rocket science we're talking about.
It's not easy to get to space.
No, even for well-funded companies with a lot of experience, it's a risky business.
So a lot of challenges, but also a lot of potential.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's circle back to Isar Aerospace and their Spectrum rocket. What can you tell us about them as a company and the tech they're developing?
So Isar Aerospace, they're a German startup based in Munich, founded in 2018.
Pretty young company.
Yeah. And what's interesting is they've developed this Spectrum rocket almost entirely in-house.
Which is impressive.
Yeah, that takes a lot of expertise across a huge range of engineering disciplines.
You got to have some serious talent.
Yeah, they're building rockets from the ground up. And the rocket itself, it's designed to carry small to medium-sized satellites.
Okay, so not the giant ones.
No, with a capacity of about 700 to 1,000 kilograms to low Earth orbit.
And how high is low Earth orbit?
We're talking altitudes of up to about 1,200 miles.
That's pretty high up.
Yeah, it is. And the rocket itself is about 28 meters tall, 2 meters in diameter.
So pretty substantial.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that they'd said beforehand that even a 30-second flight would be a success.
Which is interesting, right? Because most people think success means getting to orbit.
Right, but for them, it was about gathering that initial flight data.
They were focused on learning.
Yeah, and their ultimate goal is for Spectrum to be able to launch up to 1,000 kilograms to low Earth orbit.
So that's their target.
Yeah, which would open up a lot of possibilities for deploying different types of satellites.
Everything from Earth observation to communications.
Yeah, whole range of applications. And despite this setback, they've got future plans. They have a contract with the Norwegian Space Agency.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to launch 2 maritime surveillance satellites by 2028.
So they're not giving up.
No, they're in it for a long haul. And I think it's really powerful what their CEO Daniel Metzler said in his statement.
What did he say?
He said this test showed Europe's enduring capacity for bold thinking and grand achievements, and that their goal is to help Europe overcome this major blind spot of independent access to space.
So they're not just building rockets, they're trying to change the game.
Yeah, they're trying to position Europe as a leader in the space industry. And it's not just Isar talking themselves up. The German Aerospace Industries Association also released a statement calling this launch a groundbreaking step for German space travel.
So they're getting support from industry as well.
Yeah, and they're also emphasizing the need for more financial support for the European space sector and for developing European alternatives to things like Starlink.
Which is that massive satellite constellation that's being launched by SpaceX.
Exactly. So they're looking at the bigger picture here.
It's about more than just one company.
It's about European independence in space.
Okay, so it sounds like Isar Aerospace, they're being positioned as a potential European challenger to companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin.
Yeah, those companies that have really
Busted.
transformed the space launch industry.
They're the big names right now.
Yeah, and Isar represents this new generation of European space companies that are trying to catch up.
It's an exciting time to be watching this all unfold.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've seen the launch, we understand what happened, and we've put it in the context of Europe's space ambitions and the key players. What's the takeaway here for you, the one thing you really want our listeners to understand?
The main point is that even though this first attempt at a commercial orbital launch from mainland Europe didn't reach orbit, it was a significant step forward.
So it wasn't a failure?
No, not at all. Isar Aerospace got a ton of valuable data that they can use to improve their technology and for future launches.
They learned a lot.
Yeah, and more broadly, this event shows Europe's commitment to becoming a major player in the space market and to having its own independent access to space.
So it's about the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's about a strategic goal for Europe.
And that goal of independence seems even more important now given the current global situation with all the geopolitical shifts and the growing importance of space-based technologies.
Absolutely. I mean, space is becoming more and more important for communication, for security, for everything.
It's the ultimate high ground.
And having reliable, independent access to space is crucial for any major power.
So this launch, even though it ended early, it sends a signal about Europe's determination to achieve that autonomy.
Yeah, it's a sign that they're serious about this.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something for you to think about. Given how complex and risky space launches are, what does this event tell us about Europe's role in the 21st century? This ambitious effort that ended in a dramatic explosion over the Norwegian Sea. What does it say about the challenges, the ambition, and the pursuit of independence that's driving Europe's space program? It feels like we're just at the beginning of a much bigger story here.
It does feel that way.
And it's a story that's unfolding right above our heads.
Yeah, literally.